best. Okay. Juliet.
Just to follow up a bit on that.
Yeah.
Continuing with this idea of these three figures, all of whom are just such close political allies of the president, and also when you see the overlap between current and former members of, say, this administration and former Secretary of State Clinton's team, if you have to describe what that synergy looks like and to what extent when Americans are thinking about who their next president is, how close is the overlap between the White House and the Clinton campaign and a future Clinton administration at this point? To what extent is it a continuation of the president's term?
Well, there are some limits to how I can answer your question, in part because Secretary Clinton is going to describe what kind of president she will be. She will describe what agenda she will pursue, and she will describe the values that she will rely on in setting that agenda. And so she should do that. So that's why it's hard to assess from here how closely the vision that she will describe is to the record of President Obama. But I think what I can say are a couple of things. The first is President Obama, in offering his endorsement of Secretary Clinton, has talked about how he has seen firsthand her skills and her values, both as a candidate for president and as a Secretary of State. And the president obviously has enormous regard for Secretary Clinton and her leadership abilities. And he spoke at length about that a couple of weeks ago in Charlotte. Secretary Clinton herself has said publicly that she's interested in building on a lot of the progress that this administration has made. She's interested in continuing the work to raise wages, raise the minimum wage, fight for equal pay, increase funding for job training and education in a way that we can ensure that middle-class families in the United States are getting a fair shot at success, even in a 21st century global economy. We've seen Secretary Clinton talk about how important it is to build on the progress that we've made in digging out of the worst economic downturn since the Great Recession. We've seen Secretary Clinton talk about how important it is to build on the new foundation that's been laid by Obamacare. She believes that there are some improvements that can be made, some tweaks that can be made. But she's interested in building on that progress, not tearing it down like Republicans have advocated. She is certainly a strong believer in things like the international agreement to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. She's committed to implementing the climate change deal that was reached at the end of last year. So I think based on all of that, I think that you can rightly assess that the values and priorities of President Obama and Secretary Clinton overlap. That said, people in this room have not hesitated to highlight situations or particular aspects of her agenda that differ from President Obama. And that's natural. She's somebody with her own views, her own perspectives, and there may be some places where there's a little bit of a different view. She's going to be her own president if, in fact, she is elected. And again, the president has talked about the value of fresh legs and a new perspective in the Oval Office after the last 8 years. But the president's interested in that fresh perspective and those fresh legs being a part of someone who's committed to building on all the important progress that we've made over the last 7 years. And that certainly is why President Obama has been so enthusiastic in his support of Secretary Clinton's campaign. You'll obviously hear him talk a little bit more about this next week.
And just briefly on next week, you've mentioned